Hey, good morning. We got in pretty late last night. Got in about 10 o'clock. Hell, it was a crazy drive up. My wife's Jeep was having problems. We kept getting a camshaft sensor code triggered on the Jeep. It's a 2013, and you know, you wouldn't think that would do that, but I've read online, a lot of them do, and who knows what it is, but it causes it to go into limp mode, and so you're clearing codes and trying to limp up here, and it was fine. I mean, we were able to do 60, 65 all the way up here, but it just, you know, it's one of those things. Modern cars, don't get me started on modern cars and their electronics. But we got up here, got settled in about 11 o'clock and didn't get to bed till midnight. But as you can see, we are dealing with the early July fire season grass and wildflowers and bushes and things. And that means I got to try to take care of some of that for fire season. I came up here to take a look at the batteries. I'll go over those too. The new LiFePo batteries that we put in, LiFePo4s. Those batteries are actually better than a lot of the old lithium batteries. These ones operate all the way down to like 32 degrees or colder. So out here, that's really important, but I do plan on putting them in the heated room in the back of the cabin. So that shouldn't be a problem. Look at that nice tree right there. That's Darcy's tree. Her favorite tree. When we were out here last time, I was pretty sore and I wasn't able to get this log deck here milled. And you can see I've got some end checking, and we did not end seal it. You know, guys will say you don't need to end seal ponderosa pine. If you look at this, you could see there's some pretty good checks in there. Now, I'll be honest, I think that once I get inside these logs, they'll be fine. You know, I'll probably lose a couple inches on the end, but then they should be okay. And I do have end sealer here, and it looks like they're sealed, but it's not. It's just sap. But my back was so bad, we didn't spray them to keep any bugs out, and then we just stacked and stickered what we had here, and then we hightailed it out of here. And so you can see that this beam here, that's a 6x6 D log. It looks a little bit twisty. It should have been stacked up and stickered right. And then you can see the top boards here, they're twisty, and that's because there's no weight on them. You know, so I'm going to lose some of this. I wasn't in a good position to deal with them. I've just got to get the box blade off the tractor. And that crazy sound down there is the neighbor's goat. Hear that? Now it doesn't want to do it. But, so I got to get the box blade off. I'll bring it over here, hook up the brush hog. Hopefully I've got enough shear pins for it. These things, you know, if you hit a rock or something, these grade 3 bolts that are sitting right down in there, they break off, and that prevents you from breaking things. So we'll check the oil, make sure I got at least one extra shear bolt or two, and then hook that up. And then, as much as we love all the wildflowers out here, it's time to knock them down. As you can see, we got quite a bit. Now, I did clear out a lot of this in a previous video. I could drop a link below for you if you want to check it out. So that's good, but you can see we got a lot of grass to deal with now. And this is the beginning of fire season. You know, right now it's pretty green. We've had a lot more snow this year, a lot more water, a lot of rain. But I've got to try to get up here and just try to, around the cabin here, I've got to try to deal with all the grass and the overgrowth here as much as possible. And these are kind of cool. I don't know what those are, squirrel. But and try to get some of this knocked down. And I did not bring a weed eater with me. It wasn't the plan of this trip. There's lots of strawberry out here. I gotta tell you, there's tons of strawberry. You might see that in some of these here, but this is too much growth around the cabin, and I can't get the mower in too close. So I'm a little bit restricted to what I can get done. You know, it is what it is, but we'll break down to dirt on the driveway. You can see that I scraped here already. That was last night when we drove in. With the grass this tall, I don't want to park in it. You know, it's still a bit green, but you can see there's some dry stuff in here. So you've got green, you got dry stuff, and you don't want to pull your Jeep in, or any car, truck, or whatever, with a hot exhaust and just park on top of grass that's 2 feet tall, because it'll get up in there and it can start a fire. I took the box blade, I scraped it out a bit to try and clear it out enough to make it safe, and then went ahead and parked and unloaded. And that's because we haven't been out here in a while. It's been over 2 months. The last time we were up here trying to get some milling done was the end of April, and here we are almost the middle of July. As you can see, this is really overgrown, and I can't get into a lot of this. I can move these bricks and I can kind of come in here a little bit and scrape, and It's a strawberry right there. Natural strawberries. There's another big one. And these guys here, you know, when we first brought down a couple trees, one right over here and this one right here, there was this plant back here that I thought was a blueberry. But there's a lot of these plants, like these guys here, that have white berries on them. I don't know what they are, and I've tried to look them up before, and I haven't figured it out yet. And white berries, generally, you got to be very careful. They can be poisonous. So I don't know if, you know, if any of these are blueberry or if there's something else, you know. And so you can see the little flowers here. My guess is those aren't blueberries, and I probably need to remove them. But I wanted to check the propane. I got to get some propane pretty soon, but propane is what we use for auxiliary heat when we need it in the winter, and it's only to warm the cabin up when we arrive while we're getting the wood stove going. Oh gosh, we're below 30%. We're about 27%. It's a 500-gallon tank, so 10% would be 50 gallons. So we've got about 100 and a quarter, something like that. So we still got quite a bit of propane in there, but we need to fill it up. Anyway, I've got to get this road. You can see where the driveway is. I've got to clear that all the way out and up to the top and build a fire break. And I want to try to mow as much of this as I can while we're here. Oh, one thing I wanted to tell you is that we had a cougar come through. And it was about 2.5 weeks ago. I was going to walk over here and figure out how tall he was. He wasn't very big. I'm thinking it was a pretty young guy. It walked right through here and kind of walked, I think, this way and past there, and it seemed like it was about as tall as that stump over there. I think it was a yearling, so it wasn't that big, you know, maybe 75 or 100 pounds. But I got work to do. I think we'll get the tractor running and get working. I'm gonna have to check the batteries for balance, but the one thing about these batteries, they have battery monitors on them, and once you hook them together in parallel, they have to be within like 1 volt or half a volt of each other, something like that, so that they're quote-unquote balanced. And then as long as they're balanced, the controllers on each battery will grab all 3 of them and run them together. So they'll draw together and they'll charge together. It's supposed to run evenly. And when I hooked them up, one of them was showing 0 draw or charge while the other 2 were being used. And I thought I saw it switch once, so a different one was showing 0, but I couldn't remember. So I talked to the battery folks, and they told me, well, it sounds like they were out of balance. And if they're out of balance, it won't allow that one battery to operate. So what I've got to do is I got to take a look at these batteries and just kind of see what's going on and see what we got here. So this battery right here is showing 11 amps, whereas that one's showing 0 and that one's showing 0. Last night, this one was showing a 10 amp draw, and these 2 were 0. And at one point, that was at 13, and this was at 6 and 6 or 6 and 7. So they shouldn't do that. Apparently, they're all supposed to run at the same time, and it's just a matter of getting them balanced. And so I'm going to unplug them today and check the voltages on them, and then plug them back in and see how that works. So it's a really nice system, actually. I'm really impressed with it. Awesome connectors, big heavy cables. You got a nice bus bar here that's covered. So it's completely different than what I had before, and I'll show you what I had before here. But this one, you know, it's really nicely set up. And one of the things that I can do is I can hook up the charger that I got with them, because this Ames inverter isn't set up for LiFePo batteries. So I've got a charger here. I can hook it up, and it's set up to charge these, and all I got to do is plug it into a AC power, so that when the generator runs, it'll charge these up the way they need to be charged. So, and of course these are all going to move. They're going to go into the back room, which is insulated and heated all year. So this is a temporary install, and it isn't going to be like my last temporary install where they sit here for 10-12 years before they get moved, because these can't be out here. It can get very cold out here, and they won't take a charge if they're too cold. So there's not much point in leaving them out here in the porch, because it's just going to get too cold at some point. I'm going to get cracking, but I will bring you along when I work on these batteries, and I got to get some work done out here, so let's get to it. All right, time to take a break from doing a little firework and check these batteries out. I've got to disconnect them, so shut them off and disconnect them. See if, and don't mind my mess here. See if I can figure out why that one's at 14 amps. That's coming in, and then you have 0 and 0 here. So I'm gonna have to pull those apart and figure out what the heck's going on. Aha, now we've got 12, 12, and 5. I'm gonna leave it for a while and see what happens. All right, well, you can see now the dirt here coming up there and it's going up here. It's not as good as I usually like to have it. I did get some of it around there and around here done, and also behind the cabin. And that's just to help put in a bit of a fire break. You really don't want fires to be able to run along the ground easily. You can see it's pretty good, and it's about maybe 9 feet wide, so it's not as wide as I'd like it. Really should be 10 or 12 feet, but at least you've got a pretty decent amount of fire break road. Meanwhile, before I tell you about the batteries, because I did learn something about those, I wanted to show you something. I did a little gold panning. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I had a neighbor that told me that there's gold and silver and platinum in these hills. And I know one of the biggest gold mines in the country is not far from here. And so there's gold all up in this country, but it's not really great placer gold, although there has been some. Most of it I think is lode gold. But this right here, folks, was going to be a root cellar. And we dug this up and went down 10 feet. And the idea was that I was going to build this root cellar, and down at the very bottom down here was 10 feet down. So I'd have 2 feet of dirt cover over top of the roof of the root cellar. And it would extend out through here, and then there'd be a dry cellar in this area, and then a cabin behind it. And this was an orchard. So before I tell you about the gold that I didn't find, but bear with me, I actually had 5 apple trees in here that were extreme winter hardy apple trees. I got them from St. Lawrence Nurseries in upstate New York. They were perfect for this environment. I had high hopes for them. About 5 years of growing them, watering them, taking care of them, and the gophers ate them. I even put cherries and pears and I think a plum in here, and all of that should have grown in here. At one point I had, I think, 8 trees or something, or 10 trees in here, and they all got eaten by gophers. So I gave up. If you don't live out here, no point. And by then I realized I'm not going to need a root cellar. So I started burying it. We were actually standing in the hole right here, because you can see the edge is over there and it's actually behind us, right? Big hole. I started kind of getting into the idea of doing a little gold panning. Ever since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by the fact that people can go pull money essentially out of the ground. And so I've been watching guys like Dan Hurd and a few others out there on YouTube, and they're kind of fun to watch, you know. And I thought, gosh, I need to do this. I need to give this a try. And when I look at the rocks we have out here, I can see some mica in that rock right there. And I see all kinds of shiny stuff, right? Pyrites. There's a lot of white stuff. There's quartz and quartz seams, maybe some feldspar. There's plenty of rust. As Dan Hurd says, and everybody else seems to say, gold follows iron. And so you can see that I've got rust here. And look at that big old rusty seam. And that looks like a sediment here, dirt. Yeah, it is dirt actually, but that is a seam right there. And they're all over. I thought, what the heck, old jarhead? Get a pan and a classifier and come out here and dig up some dirt. So all I did was I took a shovel or two from here and one from there, and I panned that out. I got black sand and garnet. That's a good sign. Then I came over here and I took out that little hole right there and I panned that out. And I got black sand and garnet, and I think I even saw jade. But then I panned it out because I'm a rookie. Now why here? Because that was down there. And up there, the top of this would be the deep stuff. But I want to try more areas in here because clearly I got some black sand and I got garnet. And those are two things that I've always been told, if you've got black sand and you got garnet, you probably got gold. So why not? Didn't find any gold though, but it was fun. All right, batteries. So I finally figured out what happened with the batteries, I think anyway. What appears to have happened is when I first hooked the batteries up, they did not all three work together. They're supposed to be balanced, they say, that is within 1 volt of each other. They were within a half a volt of each other, in fact. I think 2 of them were within 1/10 of a volt and another one was like 3 or 4/10 away. But they were very close. And it looks like 2 of them actually hooked up together and the third did not. And I took a picture of that. And when I got home, I called the tech support for the battery place, and they said they're not balanced. That's all it is. And when that happens, the one that's out of balance, it'll just not use it. It'll cut it off. The voltage will look or appear the same, but the actual usage isn't going to happen on that third battery. The battery system monitors just won't allow it. So they used 2 of them, and the third one wasn't in use. Then this morning, I turned everything off, turned it on a few times. I thought I had them all working together because I thought they were all the same voltage, and it looks like the one battery that wasn't working before went and charged all the way up. All day long it was running, and it was running the house, but there was enough solar. It charged that one battery up 100%. And I didn't realize, even though all 3 were hooked up, that only one of them was getting a charge and only one of them was doing anything. So I pulled everything apart again, shut her all down, and I checked my voltages again. And lo and behold, the 2 that I thought had been running before both had 26.6 volts. The one that I thought was charging all day was at 28.6. You can't hook those up together. They won't work. It just won't happen. So I pulled that one out of the string, turned the solar panels that I can move into the sun, told the Outback to equalize, ran the maximum voltage I could, tried to get enough time, a couple hours if I could, in of charging to get those charged all the way up. They just didn't do it. It just wasn't going to happen. I need to move this way because the mosquitoes are getting me. and you know, we've got a couple little mosquito lanterns on the deck and they don't come around there then. But in any case, I got those 2 on. They started to charge up. They got up to like 26.8, but because we're running the cabin off of that power too, they didn't get all the way charged. So I'm going to leave the one battery that's at 28.6. I'm going to leave it off the bank. Next month when we come back, I'll take that and I'll take some time out here and balance those out and hook them all up. Now 2 would be perfectly fine. Gosh. 2 will be perfectly fine. There's very little power draw while we're gone. There's some fans that run in the back room, and of course the charge controllers, you know, those are running, but that's it. So it's gonna run you know, a few amp hours a day maybe. That's about it. So those 2 batteries will handle that just fine. So we'll just have to wait till we get back and get those balanced out. So that is one thing about these LiFePos, when you're putting 3 of them together like I am in parallel, to give you maximum power. They're all 24 volt batteries. I don't want to run them in series because that would give me 72 volts. I want to keep them 24 volts, but by putting 3 of them together, instead of 120 amp hours, I've got 360 amp hours of usable power. All that, I can use it all. So I only normally use about between 36 and 45 amp hours overnight in the summer, and that depends on what I'm running. In the winter, I might actually use 60 because you've got less light, less solar charging, and so I've got so much that I could easily run 3 or 4 or 5 days without having to run a generator. So that's a good thing. But as you can see, the sun's starting to go down. Got hot today, got up into the 80s, and we've been sitting outside. Normally we lock up the cabin, we button it up really tight to keep all the cool air in when it gets hot out like this. And we did that today, but we had one window open so we could hear the stereo, and it got up to 81 degrees in the cabin by 5. And when you're out here off grid, you don't have air conditioning, so it is what it is. I still got to deal with that deck of logs, and I need to anchor seal those, and I'll have to spray those before we go, and hopefully the bugs haven't got into them, because if they did, then they're going to be holy, and we don't want that. And hey, I'm catching some sun right here. Looking up there, I'm also catching some up there, so there's really not that much left to get, though. It's going to go down fast. Now, I wish you could see, well, you can. I can see what looks like a hole there. So I don't know if they're attacking this or that's just from moving them or running a cant hook into them. We should spray them. Ants are on them. They would actually be fine for quite some time unless the pine beetles get into them. If the pine beetles get into them, they'll drill holes in them, and their larvae will drill holes in them, and they'll just become a bunch of holy poles. Not really good for dimensional lumber or beams or posts. Oh, there's Darcy right there going to put the Home Defense Max on him. I won't put her on camera because she don't want to be on camera. That's a deal we've got. I try to keep her off the camera and she doesn't kill me. All right, well, we've been kind of watching this little bird that made a nest up here. I really don't want the birds to make nests up there, but you know, it is what it is. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit. If you're not out here, they're going to do what they're going to do. All right, well, I hope you guys all have a great night. Appreciate your watching. Stick around for more. And don't forget to hit that like button. Helps the channel out. Thanks for watching, folks. Y'all have a great night.